very long. This music's way too smooth. How can sound waves physically make you move? And in return, you get experiences you like. It lifts you.
Earth's starting to look pretty small now.
I guess the world really does turn.
Listening to Clara on Radio 1. I hope you're well, and it's a beautiful sunny day wherever.
Be moved by the power of BBC Sounds. Listen on the app.
We've got another midweek match of the day for you tonight. Highlights of 4 games. Manchester United host Southampton. Wolves play Arsenal. It's Newcastle against Crystal Palace. And the bottom 2 meet as well. Sheffield United at home to West Brom. Analysis from Leon Osman and Dion Dublin after the news.
This is BBC One in the East. Now the BBC News with Hugh Edwards and Amelia Reynolds at 10 o'clock.
Tonight at 10, the Queen leads the tributes to Captain Sir Tom Moore, who's died at the age of 100.
I'll keep on going whilst people are still contributing to the National Health Service.
He was the lockdown hero who raised a fortune for NHS charities and touched the hearts of people around the world.
The cause is so good. From that point of view, I'm delighted that we've got so much money for such a good cause.
Captain Tom was knighted last summer, recognising his exceptional efforts at such a
We'll come back in a minute.
difficult time for the country.
Captain Sir Tom Moore was a hero in the truest sense of the word. In the dark days of the Second World War, he fought for freedom, and in the face of this country's deepest post-war crisis, he united us all.
We'll be paying tribute to Sir Tom, who died in hospital after testing positive for coronavirus. Also tonight, following concerns about delaying the second dose, new analysis of the AstraZeneca vaccine shows that the first jab is effective for up to 12 weeks. Pupils in Scotland are told they'll start heading back to the classroom from the end of this month. And Jeff Bezos, one of the world's richest men who created Amazon, is to step down from the leading role as chief executive.
Here in the East, a simple device which could save the lives of COVID patients by monitoring oxygen levels at home. And the theatre being built in a World War II bomb crater.
Good evening. Her Majesty the Queen and the Prime Minister Boris Johnson have led the many tributes to Captain Sir Tom Moore, who's died at the age of 100. He was admitted to hospital for pneumonia in January, and then again a few days ago, as his family confirmed he tested positive for coronavirus. Sir Tom was a veteran of the Second World War who raised almost £39 million for NHS charities during the first lockdown last year. And that remarkable achievement led to nationwide fame and earned him the respect and admiration of millions. Sir Tom said the pinnacle of the past year for him was being knighted by the Queen at Windsor last summer, as our correspondent David Silito reports now.
He's a 99-year-old war vet. He's a one-man fundraising machine.
Captain Sir Tom Moore. The word inspirational is rather an understatement.
That's the way I think I've always looked at it. Tomorrow will be a good day.
What began as a little family challenge to do 100 laps of his garden became a fundraising juggernaut. On New Year's Eve, the face of 2020 was Captain Tom. He was born in Keighley in 1920 and had served in Burma during the war. After that, he'd run a business. The closest he'd ever come to fame
appearing this Christmas on
was an appearance on Blackety Black.
Tom, have you got family or anybody who'd rather not be watching this?
Yes, I've 2 girls.
Yes.
Coming up 16, coming up 14.
But everything changed when his family set up a fundraising page for Captain Tom. The hope was to raise £1,000 for NHS charities to support the nurses and doctors during the pandemic. But just over a week later, the total had passed £1 million. And by the time he celebrated his 100th birthday, the total had topped 30 million. He also had a #1 single. Captain Tom had become known the world over. He received 140,000 birthday cards.
The regimental medal.
He was made an honorary colonel. He received a knighthood. And the RAF staged a birthday flypast.
I'm absolutely delighted with all the people like you who've come to wish me a many happy birthday.
It's been an extraordinary 10 months. The final entry on his wish list was an end-of-year trip to Barbados. And then, earlier this week, it was announced that he had pneumonia and had tested positive for the coronavirus. Leading the tributes today, a statement from Buckingham Palace. The Queen said her thoughts and those of the royal family are with them, recognising the inspiration he provided for the whole nation and others across the world. In Downing Street, the Union flags were at half-mast.
Captain Sir Tom Moore was a hero in the truest sense of the word. In the dark days of the Second World War, he fought for freedom, and in the face of this country's deepest post-war crisis, he united us all.
I showed you when you were young.
Captain Tom described it as a fairy tale, but during some dark months, it was his good cheer that became a little source of joy for millions.
Never ever anticipate ever in my life anything like this. It really is amazing. And I must say to everyone, thank you very much to everyone, wherever you are.
Today's tributes to Captain Sir Tom Moore, the champion fundraiser and lockdown hero who died at the age of 100. And with me to reflect on a very long and fruitful life, and indeed a remarkable last year of his life, in Sir Tom's case, is Mark Easton, our home editor. And I'm just thinking, Mark, this really is a kind of combination of factors, isn't it? The right man at the right time for what people needed.
Absolutely. I think Britain absolutely needed Captain Tom when the pandemic was making us question everything. He was a representative of the greatest generation, the men and women shaped by wartime sacrifice, who understood what it meant by duty and resilience and humility, walking up and down his garden, up and down, uncomplainingly doing his bit. And I think Captain Tom, you know, with his medals and his regimental blazer, he linked us back to something that many in Britain see almost as this country's finest hour, the Second World War. And he won the affection, I think, of the whole nation, old and young, as lockdown required us to furlough our freedoms. This old soldier was sort of epitomising how we'd like to see ourselves in a crisis, because as well as the indomitable spirit, there was always a twinkle in his eye, a joke and a laugh. And when we needed it most, as the virus raged and we struggled to hold it together, Captain Tom kept on walking, up and down, up and down.
Mark, many thanks. Mark Easton there with his thoughts on Captain Sir Tom's life and contribution. So let's turn to the latest developments with the pandemic. Following concerns about delaying the second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine, new analysis by researchers at the University of Oxford shows that the first jab is effective for up to 12 weeks. They found that the vaccine remains 76% effective for up to 3 months after the first shot, while people wait for their second dose. They also found that the vaccine may have a significant effect on transmission of the virus, with 67% reduction in positive swabs among those vaccinated. Well, our medical editor Fergus Walsh has more on this and on growing concern at Public Health England about the way that coronavirus is showing its ability to change genetically.
Little scratch coming there.
More good news on vaccines. The Oxford AstraZeneca jab offers sustained protection against COVID disease of 76% for at least 3 months after the first shot, supporting the UK decision to delay second doses.
And inside there is a patient data sheet about the AstraZeneca vaccine that you've had today. Okay.
The Oxford jab may also cut transmission. Those vaccinated were far less likely to carry any coronavirus, meaning each person immunised may indirectly protect others.
We found there was a big reduction in people being infected with coronavirus, and because they were not infected, they can't go on and transmit to other people. And so that is really important in potentially curbing the pandemic. Secondly, we had really good protection right from a couple of weeks after the first dose through to the second dose being given 3 months later, which tells us that there's maintained efficacy over that period.
Meanwhile, more cases of the South African variant has meant fighting coronavirus is now being done house to house. 80,000 adults in 9 postcode areas of England are being urged to have a test because cases of the variant have been detected there unconnected to foreign travel. And it's emerged that the UK variant, first found in Kent, has itself undergone another mutation. Viruses evolve all the time, but there are several variants here which share one mutation of concern. It's in the spike protein and called E484K. It's been found in Bristol in a mutated version of the more contagious UK variant, and in Liverpool in a variant which mutated from the original Wuhan strain. This same mutation is also found in the South African and Brazilian variants. It appears to make the virus less visible to antibodies, a key part of the immune system, which could make vaccines less effective.
We do have some evidence from the laboratory that this mutation might reduce the efficacy of certain vaccines. Having said that, the vaccine should still work very well and reduce transmission and reduce symptoms, we hope, but we're going to need to keep a very close eye on this.
Hello, we're from Woking Council.
In Surrey, the public health teams mostly met with a positive response. What do you think about this whole exercise?
I think it's brilliant. I think it's really good that they've acted upon it really quickly. It's almost the first thing that I feel like they have taken.
Relatively urgent.
Yeah.
This door-to-door testing should provide vital information on how much the South African variant may be spreading silently within the community, and hopefully suppress it at least to a certain extent, buying vital time for the vaccine rollout. So the quicker the NHS can immunise those most at risk, the better. And social distancing remains crucial because the less virus out there, the lower the risk of it mutating again. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
We'll talk to Fergus in a moment. Before that, the latest government figures, which show the number of coronavirus cases continues to fall. There were 16,840 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period, which means that on average, the number of new cases reported per day in the past week is 23,268. Across the UK, an average of 32,466 people were in hospital with coronavirus over the 7 days to Sunday, including suspected cases in Wales. 1,449 deaths were reported. That's people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID test. On average in the past week, 1,122 deaths were announced every day. Total number of deaths so far across the UK is 108,013. Let's look at the vaccination rollout. The latest figures there, 350,348 people have had their first dose of one of the 3 approved COVID-19 vaccines. That's in the latest 24-hour period, taking the overall number of people who've had their first jab to 9,646,715. And as promised, Fergus is here. We've had quite a few developments today, Fergus. What are you going to pick out for viewers?
So I wouldn't be surprised if some viewers are confused about all these new variants, but I think the take-home message is there is some evidence that the new variants may be able to evade parts of the immune system and make the vaccines less likely to stop infection completely, but we need a lot more research there. But on a positive note, all the vaccines should give strong protection against really serious COVID disease, the type that would put you in hospital or kill you. So that's much more positive. Then on the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, very encouraging results tonight. 1 dose appears very effective for at least 3 months after the first shot. And that strongly supports the UK policy of this 12-week gap between the first and second dose. And then these tantalising findings still out for review that the vaccine may curb transmission. And that would be really important in reining in the pandemic.
Fergus, many thanks once again. Fergus Walsh there, our medical editor. Let's talk about another development today, because France's health regulator became the latest in the European Union to recommend that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine should not be given to people over 65 years old. They say that more studies were needed before the vaccine was used in older age groups. It follows a similar decision by Germany last week, and that is despite the EU's Medicines Agency approving the vaccine for all ages. Now, ministers at Westminster are under more pressure to tighten the quarantine rules for people arriving into the UK. The rules were tightened last month, meaning that all travellers must self-isolate for 10 days when they return to the UK, while people returning to England from high-risk countries will have to quarantine in hotels. But Labour says that these measures don't go far enough, given the high level of infections. Our political correspondent Ben Wright has the story.
There's a trickle of arrivals compared with before, but people are still coming into the UK, around 21,000 a day, including hauliers. Border restrictions were tightened again after the South African and Brazil variants of COVID were discovered. But Labour says it's time to isolate all arrivals to the UK in hotels.
The greatest threat to the gains of the British people over the past 10 months and to the vaccine rollout is a mutant strain of the virus reaching these shores. We have to do all we can to prevent that happening. That means a comprehensive hotel quarantining system for all arrivals in the UK.
But we're going to be dealing with new variants coming in of COVID for perhaps years to come. Yours is not a sustainable long-term solution to this, is it?
I disagree. I think that this is absolutely vital.
At the moment, anyone coming into the UK needs proof of a negative COVID test and must quarantine for 10 days. Direct flights to the UK from 33 high-risk countries, including South Africa, are now also banned, and people who've been in those places in the previous 10 days are not allowed in. Except for British citizens and residents, who have to self-isolate and will soon have to quarantine at their own expense in a hotel. The policy was announced 5 days ago, but the hotels are not yet up and running.
We announced the intention of this last week in conjunction with other initiatives that we're doing, including banning travel from other countries. And the details will be announced. It is a logistical effort, as well, as you will appreciate.
But today, the Scottish Government said the UK's quarantine plans did not go far enough.
We intend to introduce a managed quarantine requirement for anyone who arrives directly into Scotland, regardless of which country they have come from.
Here at Westminster, the opposition says this is the latest example of ministers bungling their approach to borders and acting too late. There certainly seems to be a long-running debate within the government between some ministers who want the tightest possible restrictions and others fretting about the impact that could have on airlines and the economy. The government says its scientific advisors have not recommended completely closed borders, but the argument around risk isn't settled. Ben Wright, BBC News, Westminster.
Now, pupils in Scotland will start heading back to the classroom from the end of this month. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, made the announcement to MSPs this afternoon. All early years and childcare, as well as pupils in primaries 1 to 3, will return full-time in the week beginning the 22nd of February. And the First Minister added that there would be a part-time return for secondary school pupils in S4 to S6 who have to complete practical work for national qualifications. The timetable will be confirmed in a fortnight's time and will depend on the lockdown continuing to work. Our Scotland editor, Sarah Smith, has more details.
In less than 3 weeks, these nursery school kids could be waving hello to their friends, as all early learning and childcare facilities should reopen full-time on the 22nd of February, along with primary school classes 1, 2 and 3. To prioritise these children, lockdown rules will remain firmly in place everywhere else.
Now, I have to be candid that our room for manoeuvre, given the current state of the pandemic, is limited. But I want to be equally candid, as I have been before, about the government's determination to use every single inch of headroom that we have to get children back to school, even if that means adults living with restrictions for longer.
Only a few older students, like the children of key workers, attend Kings Park Secondary in Glasgow. And only a small percentage of the school's senior pupils in S4 to S6 will be allowed back on a very limited part-time basis to undertake practical schoolwork.
They can't necessarily do music technology at home or practical electronics. So that's really important to get our young people back. So we need to think very carefully about how we bring young people back.
Students still stuck at home want a date for when they might be back in the classroom.
It's really giving us a lot of anxieties about what's going to happen when we do eventually go back to school. It's all going to be a lot to catch up on.
So it's just a hit in my morale, not going to school.
I would like to know when I'm going back, but I'd like it to be certain that I'm going back then, rather than it just being constantly pushed back.
All school staff and older pupils will be offered at-home testing twice a week, but it may be some time before more students can return.
They will probably trial this initial phase for around a month. I think it's going to be difficult for them to shift very quickly beyond that. In a 2-week period, you'll be able to identify whether there are new infections. And if we have this rapid repeat testing, then people can get on top of that pretty rapidly.
While Scotland's vaccination programme has been criticised for not being rapid enough. The Scottish Government is facing sustained criticism over a vaccine rollout that is slower than in other parts of the UK. Nicola Sturgeon says the number of daily vaccinations is increasing, and she wants to see that programme grow and accelerate. The youngest children in Scotland should return to some normality soon. Strict rules will remain for the rest of the country until at least the start of March. Sarah Smith, BBC News, Glasgow.
Staff carrying out border checks at ports in Northern Ireland were told not to carry out their duties today after concerns were raised about their safety. Mid and East Antrim Council has withdrawn staff from Brexit inspection duties, and the EU has condemned threats against staff telling their officials in Northern Ireland not to attend work. It's an escalation of tensions over the new post-Brexit arrangements for Northern Ireland, which has brought about the reality of a new trade border which lies in the Irish Sea. Tonight, Boris Johnson called on the EU to take urgent action to resolve issues around the border. Our Ireland correspondent Emma Vardy has this analysis.
Northern Ireland's ports have become a focal point for anger over Brexit. This graffiti at the entrance to Larne Harbour has now been removed. But staff have also raised concerns about suspicious behaviour around the port. Today, the officials that man the border checkpoints at both Larne and Belfast Port were stood down.
We have seen increasing signs of discontent and tensions within certain sections of the community. We have seen a number of incidents of graffiti, threatening or intimidatory in nature towards staff at points of entry.
The growing tensions stem from the new Brexit arrangements, which mean lorry loads of goods arriving into Northern Ireland from Britain are subject to new checks and controls that never existed before, which many unionists view as an unacceptable border, dividing up the UK. Today, hauliers arriving into Belfast and Larne were told for now checks on goods were being suspended. Because of the safety concerns, the EU also told its staff not to show up for work at the ports today. And while this isn't being linked to any organised group, it goes to show it doesn't take much to disrupt what is already a fragile situation here.
We condemn very strongly any threat of violence against port officials or anybody else in Northern Ireland.
Police say there's no evidence that loyalist paramilitaries are behind this, but Northern Ireland's past means there's always heightened awareness over security. The DUP are calling for the government to override parts of the Brexit deal, which are causing the greatest unease.
Ironically, all of the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol were meant to be put in place to maintain the peace in Northern Ireland. And yet we find that its provisions and the way in which it's been handled are causing tensions.
It's not clear how quickly port staff will return to work here. But today, Michael Gove, the minister in charge of Brexit, said there are serious problems with the arrangements for Northern Ireland which need to be addressed. Emma Vardy, BBC News, Larne.
And the EU has told British fishermen that they are banned indefinitely from selling live mussels, oysters, clams, cockles and scallops to the 27 EU member states. As the UK is now a separate country from the EU countries, it is not allowed to transport the seafood to the EU unless they have been already treated in purification plants. British fishermen say they don't have enough tanks ready and that their business is less viable. The government here has promised to continue to raise the issue with the EU. Now, the Russian opposition activist Alexei Navalny has been told that he will serve 2.5 years in prison, a decision that has brought about worldwide criticism and prompted more protests in Russia. He's been accused of breaching his parole, but the time in question was when he spent time in Germany being treated for poisoning, an attack blamed on the Russian leadership. Mr. Navalny and his supporters say he is being persecuted because he is feared by President Putin. The UK and other countries have called for Mr. Navalny's immediate release, as our correspondent Steve Rosenberg reports from Moscow, and a warning there is some flash photography coming up.
For years, the Russian authorities claimed Alexei Navalny was no threat to them, that he was a nobody. But outside court, they were taking no chances. Inside, Mr. Navalny was locked in a glass cage. He'd been accused of a parole violation in a case he insists is politically motivated. A heart sign to his wife Yulia, who was there in court. When the verdict came, he put on a brave face. But the Kremlin's most vocal critic had been sent to prison for 2.5 years. Up until today, the Russian authorities avoided sending Alexei Navalny to prison for fear of making him a political martyr. But the calculation has changed. To the Kremlin, Mr. Navalny is now seen as a bigger threat at liberty than behind bars. That's because in Russia, he has become the face of protest, a catalyst for political change. Mr. Navalny's arrest had brought people onto the streets across the country. Now his prison sentence has sparked international condemnation.
We reiterate our call for the Russian government to immediately, unconditionally release Mr. Navalny, as well as the hundreds of other Russian citizens wrongfully detained in recent weeks for exercising their rights.
Message not received. This is Moscow tonight. Police are out in force and determined to stop any sign of protest in support of Mr. Navalny. Alexei, we're with you. He just has time to say. The authorities will be hoping that with Russia's leading opposition figure in prison, the protests will lose steam. And if they don't, well, those in power here are in no mood for compromise. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
Now, with just a week to go before Donald Trump's second impeachment trial, the two sides have been laying out their arguments in pre-trial documents. Senior Democrats have accused him of inciting insurrection at the US Capitol in January by creating a powder keg of discontent. But Mr. Trump's lawyers say that the impeachment process violates the Constitution. Now, in the past hour, it's been announced that Jeff Bezos is to stand down from his role as chief executive of the internet giant Amazon. That's the company that he created some 30 years ago. He's not severing his ties with Amazon. It's said that he'll work on other projects. The news came after the company reported huge profits for the last 3 months of 2020. Let's get the latest from our business correspondent, Michelle Fleury, in New York. Michelle, what do you make of this?
Look, this was a huge surprise. I think everyone from Wall Street to Silicon Valley was caught unawares by this. Jeff Bezos is someone whose success is unquestionable. From scratch, he built arguably, one of the top companies around the world today. And suddenly he's announcing in a memo to employees that he is going to step aside from the online retail juggernaut and hand over the reins to Andy Jassy. Now, Andy Jassy is someone who runs the company's cloud business, web-based cloud business. It is a booming part of the company, and perhaps one that many people are less familiar with. We think of it as an online retailer, but the success of this division is such that he has been elevated to the top job. Those, though, who think that Mr. Bezos is disappearing, think again. He is moving to the executive chair role, and he's expected to be heavily involved in any major decision within the company.
Michelle, many thanks for the update. Michelle Fleury, our business correspondent in New York. Well, Amazon, as it happens, wasn't alone, of course, in announcing huge profits this year, as most of the big tech firms had a hugely successful 2020, prompting yet more questions about their overwhelming dominance in financial and business terms. From San Francisco, our correspondent James Clayton sent this report.
There have been winners and losers from this pandemic, and some of the biggest winners are also some of the richest companies in the world, based around San Francisco. Take here at Apple. Last week, the company posted record quarterly sales of more than £80 billion. At that rate, during this 2.5-minute news report, Apple will have done £1.5 million worth of sales. Big tech has had an astonishingly profitable pandemic.
We all turned to technology more during the pandemic. It's as simple as that. We were doing more things online than ever before, from gaming to shopping to seeing our doctor. You know, they're not charities. You know, they are making money out of, you know, what they're enabling.
But some believe that making so much money at a time of economic hardship shows that there's something fundamentally wrong with the economy. Let's take Tesla, for example. Just look at its share price over the last year. It's now worth more than the 9 next largest car companies combined. It's made Elon Musk the richest man in the world. Speaking of wealth, out of the 10 richest people in the world now, 6 are US tech entrepreneurs. Elon Musk, Tesla, Jeff Bezos, Amazon, Bill Gates, ex-Microsoft, Larry Ellison, Oracle, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, and Larry Page, Google. Joe Biden has said he wants to look closely at competition around big tech, according to those close to him.
I don't think he has a huge choice in the matter. Within the business community, there is a growing chorus of voices who are realizing that they're operating on a very unfair playing field.
President Biden is also reportedly considering hiring an antitrust czar to look into monopolies in tech. Other senior Democrats have even called for companies like Google and Facebook to be split up. Big tech has had a bumper year, but with Joe Biden as president, they're likely to face more and more scrutiny, should so much power and wealth be concentrated in the hands of just a few companies on the west coast of America. James Clayton, BBC News.
Let's have a reminder of our main story this evening, the news that Captain Sir Tom Moore has died at the age of 100. He'd been treated for pneumonia and had tested positive for coronavirus. He'd raised tens of millions of pounds, as we know, for NHS charities by walking in his garden before his 100th birthday. In a moment, we'll have the news where you are, but we'll leave you tonight with some memories of a remarkable man. Good night.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high. I'll go on as long as I can, or as whilst it's worthwhile doing it. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky, and sweet till the song of the lark. Never imagined anything like this.
You are the UK's official #1.
That really is truly amazing, isn't it?